beloved calls you here today to ask you for this dance. What will you say? Are you gonna throw the chance away? Do you hear the music? Know you've got a lot of things to do, but I think the world could turn in time.
Hello and good morning, and welcome to Never Not Here. My name is Richard Miller, and we do these shows periodically, and we're lucky today we're on a live show, so later we'll give you a number and you can call in if you have any questions. And television, you know, it's just somehow there's a passion and it wants to share. Sometimes people have a job and they wanna put on a show, you know. And in this case, it's not really a job; it's public television, and it's more on the passion, and we want to share what is meaningful in our lives. And so many times, what's meaningful or what we think is meaningful is kind of an idea, and we want to say, well, look at my ideas. Maybe you want to buy my ideas. And of course, you've got your own ideas, and maybe you're chock full of them, and maybe there's no room for any more, or you don't want any more, or whether it's interesting or not. We're talking about life, and we're talking about like what makes life easy, what makes traveling through life lighter and more fun. And in one way, you can say that like there's two parts to life, maybe. It's a way to say it. One part is we assume that something's out there, that something's happening, that we're interacting with something. And the second part of the formula is our interpretation of that. And so we don't really know the relationship. We're kind of thinking that our interpretation is pretty good. And what we find, what we can notice is that everybody thinks their interpretation is just great. And what we're trying to say, or what we're trying to point to, is that maybe the interpretation is kind of arbitrary, because after all, 6 billion people on the planet, 6 billion interpretations. And the cool part about your interpretation is often how you react with life, and what seems to be in front of you confirms your interpretation. And I would call this the generosity of existence. That we all can really look at life and just say, okay, what I think is right. I wish everyone else would think like me. And at a certain point in your life, you kind of start to doubt that and say, well, how can that be? Because everyone's got their own interpretation. And so then what I'm saying is a part of the formula, the interpretation, is either arbitrary or not so important as not such importance as we give it. And what's out there, well, I don't even know if we know what's out there. You know, what is this life? I mean, we're so focused on our interpretation that maybe we're not even noticing what's out there. And these are some of the invitations we want to talk about this morning. We're really lucky we've got somebody that talks real plain language. And once in a while I get in here with people that I really want to kind of put some kind of number on you. And this is my good friend Paul Hederman. We've known each other for about a year. Welcome, Paul. And coming from San Francisco.
Yep.
So we're making an invitation to just take a second look at life, or just to notice how interpretations somehow just kind of take over our life. And the ease of that is just maybe to notice what we're told, or actually the testimony is that you can know life without an interpretation, or without interpretation being in the first primo piano, like the first phase of your attention, just all that takes up your attention.
Well, for me, it's just looking at what's happened to you here. If you're traveling well, then keep doing what you think you're doing. For me, that wasn't the case. And because of that, because of the suffering that my way of looking at life entailed, and my solutions to that suffering, which created more suffering, maybe I was brought to a point to sort of reinvestigate what was going on. And what I saw was, like you were saying, it was your interpretation. I found out, to me, it wasn't really my interpretation, that I'm a product of an interpretation. I'm a product of a mental process that's been conditioned through what I was brought up as, and also genetically, I imagine. And that interpretation is that there's a long-lasting, independent, separate entity called Paul here, mostly because of the identification as being a body. And that system of thought and interpretation, I call it self-centeredness. And I suffered from an extreme case of self-centeredness that produced a lot of consequences in my life, seeking relief from it. And those consequences took up a lot of my time. I was put into for me, my solutions created a magnetic appeal to people in uniform. I started to get in a lot of trouble attempting to get my solutions. And the consequences just kept building up. But the consequences weren't enough to convince me to stop doing what I was doing, because I was willing to pay any consequence tomorrow not to feel uncomfortable now. And in the state that I was seemingly in, I was uncomfortable. What happened with me is that state is called self-centeredness, and obviously the way it says it is the way it's built. It's all centered on this idea of being a self. And when I questioned that, who was this Paul, I started getting some relief, because I didn't find anyone there. And what I saw was, I was really just reacting to an interpretation by my mind concerning the conscious contact that I actually am. So my experience of conscious contact here is that there is seeing, hearing, feeling, tasting, touching, smelling. I may have forgotten one or added one there. And that's the conscious contact. That's living. That's how I'm engaged with this place we call the world. That's how I meet it. I smell it, feel it, taste it, touch it, and hear it. And also my mind thinks about it. That's a sixth sense. In Buddhism they call the mind a sense, just like seeing. But the mind sees thoughts like an eye sees a bird if it flies by the window or something. This conscious contact, my mental process, reacts to that conscious contact and says, I'm in conscious contact. I'm the one who's hearing. I'm the one who's feeling. I'm the one who's tasting. I'm the one who's thinking. And also, I'm the one who's thinking. And when that happens, I forget the feeling of being alive, that conscious contact, which is totally rooted in what's happening now, and I live an interpretation about what that conscious contact means, and that meaning has been given by self-centeredness. And it is not a unique, random, organic system. Many of us are saddled by it. We look at life as how it pertains to us, and we have a difficult time seeing it any other way. And this apparatus, while this is going on, has ability to give meaning to things. That's why we call it a subjective experience. So I could look at this glass, and I'm feeling pretty good today. The glass isn't a problem. I can look at the glass tomorrow, I'm not feeling too good, it is a problem. I can look at the glass the next day, I'm feeling good, it isn't a problem. What is it? Is it a problem?
So the interpretation goes up and down.
Based on where you're at.
In other words, and where you're at. But, I mean, you were saying like a problem, or like the self-centeredness is created by saying that this contact with what's out there, smelling, tasting, and so on, your five senses and the sixth sense, thought, and maybe a seventh sense, your feelings.
No, the self-centeredness isn't made by that.
Yeah,
the self-centeredness claims it. It says, I'm the one.
It claims it. No, yes. But what I'm saying is that somehow it just seems natural to say that's I.
To who?
Now, I don't know. To the same I that's what's never questioned.
Well, that's why you're taking it to be natural. But to who? Who is it natural? Not to question that. The I itself. And the I is, to me, is that false installment. It's a product of a mental process. The mental process, the brain and the mind, what we call the mental process, produces a product called the sense of being a self, a long-lasting, independent, separate entity, reinforced by your perception of a body. That sense of a self, the first movement that it has in it, that mental process, is to claim what's ever going on. Instead of seeing that there's seeing, you think it's I'm seeing. Same thing with thinking. This is what drives people crazy. A thought is just a thought until it becomes my thought. As soon as there's an identification as the thinker of it, that thought has a lot of meaning, because you believe the thought's bringing you meaning, but the identification as Paul downloads meaning into the thought. All of your old conditioning, all your old beliefs, all your old ideas, it's as if when there's conscious contact and the mental process arises and says, I'm in conscious contact, that I is attached to tons of files that download into that event, and then that download gets projected and gives meaning to that thought or what you saw or what you heard or what you felt or what you taste. That is the interpretative event. Yeah?
So anyhow, that's real clear, because, there's so many thoughts that we don't claim. Because, you're going down the street and there's thousands of things happening, and we only claim 10 or 20 things that happened on the way to the studio. And so then somehow that I mechanism, or that identification, says that's my thought, I thought that. And some other thoughts, maybe, I don't know, the streetcar is noisy today. Who cares, It just goes in and out, and we don't even register it.
So let's say someone comes here and talks about their thoughts, and they talk to us about their thoughts. We would have incredible wisdom about their thoughts. So if someone's saying, hey, I'm thinking of, robbing that bank this afternoon. I think I have a really good plan. I have a pair of Pampers. I'm going to put them on, and I'm rushing and, get the money. And you're going, hey, wait a minute, bro. I think you should reconsider this. This is a sort of a wild, crazy set of thoughts you're having. But I may be having a similar set of thoughts, and I'm thinking they're incredibly genius-like. What's the difference? I have an immunity to his thoughts because they're his. I don't have much immunity to these thoughts because they're held as mine. There's a claiming of those thoughts.
When you say they're his, in other words, they're held as his.
That's right. So I have wisdom about it because they're not mine.
Your separation, or stand back, or...
My ideas of Paul don't download when it comes to his thoughts. My ideas of Paul, which I'm very unconscious of, you are conditioned up the wazoo, basically. My ideas of Paul are attached to when there's a claiming of the thought. Then they give meaning to the thought based on their old conditioning. I don't give meaning to his thoughts based on my old conditioning.
Meaning and blindness, in a way.
Exactly, it's blindness because it's an interpretation. While you're actually living, while you're in conscious contact, you're being cut off from that, and you're living an interpretation by a mental process. And that mental process is very small and defined. Yeah, and it's actually something not to rely on. Look at your life. What happens when you have a problem and you go home and think about it? You come out of the room with 10 more problems. The problem is the thinking, not so much the problem you think you need to go home to think about. It's the problem is the thinking about it. Yeah, because the downloading of ideas, old ideas, we're not really living here. We're living an interpretation. We're in a time delay. There's the conscious contact. Then there's the reaction of mind to it, and then the mind claims the conscious contact and uses it to make up a story, which is always the past coming from your memory. You've never had a thought ever in your life. All you have is seen thoughts, and they're like stale popcorn from an old popcorn maker. Yeah? Stimuli affects your conditions. Your conditions, thoughts arise. You see them, and then your identification as that self. There's a claiming of those thoughts as yours, and then you're bound to the idea of those thoughts. That's called being bonded to the bondage to a self. Yeah? And if you're having a great time and your chains to that self are gold, go ahead, polish them. If you're not, there's a solution. You're not that. Yeah.
So anyhow, let's look at how life could look is like if even my thoughts were just like your thoughts. In other words, you said if you come to me and have some thoughts, I've got incredible wisdom. So somehow if my thoughts were separate enough that it was just as if it was coming through you or another body, it might be incredible wisdom about my thoughts or about my interaction with what do you call it, the interface or the...
Exactly. In other words, there would be a response, not a reaction. A reaction is past information responding to, let's say, a new event. Yeah, it's a reaction. There's an ability to respond to the event. It's called being alive. Yeah?
Right, and we all have it.
It's all the potential is there, but if you're bonded to this idea of self, you'll be unconscious to that potential.
During the broadcast, we can take some calls, so we'll be putting up the number from now on. I don't know if we've got a kind of a handle on what we're talking about, or if you've got a question about it. Sometimes it's hard to just present something like this as a dead presentation, and just say, okay, well, here's what I think, and it's sometimes easier to respond to somebody that has a question.
And remember, this is just an invitation. There is no presumption here that this could help you or not. It's just an invitation. I believe you have the right to hear it. You can do what you want with it.
Right, an invitation. Right. So, let's talk a little bit about openness to hear something new. Because you said if your chains are golden and you love them, keep polishing them. In other words, if your concepts and your interpretations seem to be taking you where you want to go, then maybe you don't want to hear anything else. Or there's no room for anything else, or there's no need for it.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, that's it. I mean, seriously, this is not a draft. You're not being conscripted into this. It's just an invitation. Maybe if your life is going super well, you'll probably have no interest in this. Maybe if things don't seem to be working, like for me, I remember all my relationships with women never seemed to work well. And then one day I looked at all those relationships, and there was one constant in all those relationships. It was me, actually. I wasn't with the same woman every time. It was me.
It was you,
so
right?
My tendency of this mind is to blame others for the way I'm feeling, but it actually doesn't work that way. You may get a little relief in the act of blaming, but there's no solution to it. This dilemma keeps on continuing. So I just found something that worked, and how I know it works is because I'm traveling lighter through the terrains of my day. Yeah, and it's been like an all-terrain vehicle. It's been durable over the years. Yeah.
Let's see if someone's on the phone.
Hello, Richard. Hello, Paul. This is Andrew Nelson. Your show is very important. I think the most important thing is truth. And, Martin Luther King said that the contents of human character are essentially aspects of human virtue. For example, truthfulness being the foundation of all human virtue.
So, Andrew, the way I interpret truth is just like really what's out there. What is before interpretation, because interpretation is always kind of like going to be personal toward the truth.
Well, the personal reputation of an individual as it relates to his personal truthfulness and trustworthiness is key, because then it's someone that we can depend on who's going to always be there to give us meaningful, efficacious truth.
Yeah, you'll never get that guarantee as a self, because self is built on a movement called duality. So there's truth and falsehood in all of self. Yeah, so in a sense, a point of view is true, and yet because it's a point of view, it's false. Yeah.
So in other words, in a way, there can't be a truth without falseness, because otherwise there's no need for it.
There's universal reality, which is truth.
Yeah, and that you can live from, but you can never know. Yeah, so you live from that truth. And then there's an expression of the truth through your apparatus, but you can't know it, because that would make it an object to you as the subject. And there is no subject.
In other words, you can't separate yourself from it to say, oh, there's truth as an object.
That's not my sense of it. Yeah. You are that truth. And that's the recognition. For me, it's just telling the truth about what I'm not, and that's the activity of what I am. That awareness has the ability to recognize what it's not. Yeah? So when I tell the truth about what I'm not, and it's not me telling the truth, when there's the truth is told about what I'm not, that's the activity of what I am. That's living that. Yeah? Because that awareness illuminates what seems to be cloudy. So you see, instead of seeing from what you're not, you see what you're not. And that to me is
so what we're always doing when
truth.
You said download, we're trying to live from what I'm not. And so then it's just not true. It just won't work.
Well, the only thing you do is living gets replaced by an interpretation, because what you're not is what you're not. It's contrived. It's a mental process. Yeah? And so obviously it's an interpretation. So every interpretation is sort of, the verb of life gets more conceptualized and made into nouns and made into ideas that are rigid and solid. There's no movement in that. To me, the experience of living from truth is very economical. It pares you down. You don't have a huge wealth of wisdom. You just know what to do next. Yeah? And all this stuff, it's very, very, very fluid. It's extremely verbing to me.
Let's go into that a little, because you just said that quickly. You know, the verb of life gets made into a noun. So noun is like an object or the interpretation.
Exactly.
Oh, this is that. Oh, there's a tree. Oh, this is a chair.
So the verb isn't seen. The verb is seen as it's happening to a noun. So let's say when we make so there's the verb of living, and then there's an assumption that this is a noun. This is me. I'm the subject. That's living. Living is happening to me. It's totally a point of view. And I'm not saying it's true or not. Just look at its roots. Are you happy with that point of view of looking at life as that it's always happening to me? Where does all victimhood arise from? That point of view.
You know, about verb and noun, I think you said it last night, because you said, okay, somebody sees running water, and they said, okay, I'm going to call it a river. So, you know, it's really just a verb, running water, and a river is kind of a concept.
Yeah.
It's take a bucket of it and say, okay, look, I got river here. No, sorry, you don't.
That's right, you don't. It's just an idea. But the feeling of the river is the experience of it, yeah? So when you're in the water and it's moving, you're getting the true essence of what we're attempting to represent by the word river. You're experiencing the verb of it, yeah?
Right.
Not an idea of it, not an idea of the verb, but the verb. So for me, it's not to learn about living, it's living. Yeah? Get a sense of what it's like to be consciously in contact, and you'll have some discrimination about what you're not. You'll see what you're not. You'll see it, because it's a reaction to conscious contact. Yeah? And so if consciousness is in contact, consciousness can also see the reaction to conscious contact. Yeah? You can be conscious of what's appearing, and in that being conscious of it, you will see that it's not you. And that's the immunity to being at the effects of what's not happening.
Do you have another question, Andrew? I guess he's gone.
Andrew,
Okay,
thank
okay.
you.
Thank you, Andrew. So, be at the effect of what's not happening. Let's try to go through that a little, because sometimes you can say, because it's a little bit confusion prone. But, I mean, what's not happening is my interpretation. So, there's another person on the phone. Let's just see what they have to say. Hello?
Yes, I would just like to ask a question to the guy, Paul. He's so good at explaining things. I just wanted to ask him, if you have a problem, how do you do the interpretation? Do you just have no thoughts about it, or do you let time take care of it? Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, I don't know what will happen if there's a problem, because I don't have any written rules of how to deal with a problem. The way I enter into that relationship with the problem, it's not me that's in relation to the problem. For me, the inherent real problem is the idea of being the me. The problem out here is secondary. So if I see the initial problem as not me, I tend to have a new way of looking at the problem that's appearing.
Problem,
yes.
Right.
But when I'm looking at a problem from a problem, it doesn't really beg for much solution. It doesn't
In other words, like
produce any
sometimes you
solution.
say that first problem of the looking from a me is like the main knot that contains all the problems.
That's right. That's right.
Somehow, if you can loosen that one, all the other ones seem to.
I forgot the lady's name, but there is an activity that this apparatus does, which is it gives meaning to things. You don't have a choice in that matter. This is what this does.
That's what
so
mind does, right?
I'm giving meaning to problems. So there may be, quote unquote, a problem, but what really is adding a lot of the weight to the problem is the meaning that is being given through me. And if I'm identified as self, where those meanings are going to come from are from a system called self-centeredness. And those meanings are going to really add a lot of weight to the problem, and they're going to add time to the problem, and they're going to bring memory to the problem, and they're going to present or project a future about more problems.
Another thing they're going to bring is like repetition. And then you're going to say, well, this thing, I'm stuck. Because then you'll see that the same problems come up from the same kind of consciousness or the same conditioning. And then you get the idea of stuckness, and then you say, oh, this is even more serious because it was just a little problem before, but after 20 times it must be, why is this always happening to me?
So if you are in a feeling of stuckness and it seems to get chronic, what are you going to do? You're going to seek relief, yeah? You're going to seek relief. You're going to spend money you may not have. You're going to get drunk. You're going to do this. You're going to act out. Maybe sleep with your best friend's wife. Who knows? But a whole new set of problems are going to ensue from how you read the first problem. I've noticed it all the time when people they talk with me and they say, I'm going to go home and think about this. I'll even offer them to go to a movie with them because I know if they go home and think about it, they're going to spawn about 10 more problems in the thinking of it, because the thinking is a very failed system. All the thoughts that we think we're having or the thoughts that we notice here are coming out of a specific popcorn maker called self-centeredness. You cannot think outside the box.
Our old memory banks.
Exactly. You can't think outside the box. You're going to get Orville Redebacker thoughts every freaking time.
Right?
There's no way you're going to transcend that
machine
popcorn.
is not going to go outside of that.
It's not going to pop cranberries, in other words. So, I mean, if you're tired of watching the movie of life with those stale pieces of popcorn from Orville, then maybe, just maybe, you can entertain I'm not that center of that system self, because that's what binds you to the products of the system of self, is being identified as the center of self.
So to answer the question, and more or less, we just stand back from the problem, or what? Just let it.
I don't know what will happen at that time. If it seems like it's a real problem, and it seems like the house is on fire, I'm going to maybe find a pail of water. Another time, I'll see the house, and I'll recognize that's not really going on, and I won't need a pail of water. I don't know what will happen.
Maybe it'll be peeling, and you'll say, I'll get a pail of paint.
Who knows? You don't know.
No, but it doesn't stop your action either, because, I mean, we're in action all the time. That's part of...
Well, you're an action figure here.
Yeah.
We're all like, living little action figures on this board game. Like giant bumper cars. We're running into each other constantly. But you're not that. That's the good news. I mean, what allows you to have a life is your awareness of it. Yeah? Maybe the awareness is what life is, not you having it.
That's a great question. What allows you to have a life?
What allows you to have a life? You have to be conscious to know it.
In another way, we kind of have the possibility to make up thoughts and make up interpretations. And somehow that allows us to have the life that we're thinking we have.
See, but if thoughts are made up, they're defined by the system they're from. So self-centeredness has a certain set of thoughts. You're not going to transcend them. You're not going to have a new thought, ever. They're just being rehashed from the same system. The beauty of it is you have the possibility of leaving the system because you actually truly have never been in the system. You've just been sort of wearing it like a helmet. So you've been breathing the atmosphere it creates. Look at what it does. People constantly are dwelling in what's not happening through thought.
In other words, everything you're thinking is not happening.
Exactly.
It's removed from what's happening.
Exactly.
In other words, you called it the conscious contact is like what's out there. It's your sensory perception of what's out there.
See, there's thoughts when you're working on a car. Those are practical thoughts. It says, turn the nut left, yeah? And so you have the wrench, you turn it on, yes. But then when the mind starts going, shh, I think I could have done that better. I did a really terrible job with that nut. Oh, no, I think that guy did a much better job with that nut. That's the insanity of self-centeredness. That's what you get relying on that system of thought. You get a lot of fluff that drives you incredibly insane. Yeah? And every once in a while it has some practical thoughts about how to put 1 and 1 into 2, yeah, and start something up.
So in other words, like what, some things we said in the very beginning when we've said, like, if somebody else comes to me and with their thoughts, I have incredible wisdom about their thoughts. So if somehow I'm not playing the self game, all thoughts, even the ones that are flowing here, just seem like something out there, and they seem practical, and or I have a appropriateness toward those thoughts.
Well, for me, the simple recognition is this: when you're actually aware of the conscious contact, you will see when thoughts present what's not happening as what's not happening.
How you'll see that it's not happening.
And that's the immunity
and
to
it's
it.
kind of lightness, well, that's a good
Because
story.
what solution could you have about being absorbed in what's not happening? There's nothing you can do except admit it's not happening. That's the solution.
Yeah.
There's no other solution. If you start trying to think about how can I fix what's not happening, you've missed the underlying quality, which is it's not happening.
Yeah.
That's what occurs. You start recognize when the thoughts go into the past or the future, into these little dwelling mental houses of what's not happening, and you become the guest of that house. So now you're reacting to next Friday, and next Friday you can have cancer because anything can happen in what's not happening. Yeah. So you get one little hint that you may be losing your job, and you go home and you think about it, and you're basically destitute by next Friday. But it's actually being experienced now in your body. You're worried about. You're experiencing the mental equivalent of fear, which is anxiety, and you're reacting physically to an impending threat, but it's not happening.
Yeah. So then, in other words, what's not happening means that we have the idea it's going to happen, or it could happen.
Exactly.
It's really
And that's
it happened so many
important.
times before,
But the thing is,
And how do I break this pattern?
we don't give it we don't have a good quality because we're not really aware of what's happening, so that's not a good measuring or an antidote to what's happening. So what could be happening or what should be happening or what did happen seems to be really as important as what's happening because we don't have that quality of what's happening. So we don't have anything.
We don't have that quality. Say that in another way.
We don't know how to hold it up against what's not happening. What's not happening seems to have a lot of weight with us because we're not anchored in what's happening. See, when you're not anchored in what's happening, you'll have a tendency to be affected by what's not happening greatly. But the antidote to what's not happening is what's happening.
So when you say anchored in it, what comes to me is what's happening right now doesn't require a thought. And we're holding up a bunch of thoughts from the past and the probable future and just plain anxiety. And we're trying to measure it with what's happening, which doesn't even have a thought. And it just seems like, it doesn't measure up.
Well, the thing is, it's not us doing it. See, that's the solution. It's the mental process. And you're not the mental process. If you're anything, I would believe what you truly are is being expressed in conscious contact. I believe you're the consciousness that's in contact
The
with this
expression
place.
of it? Did you say
I think
what's
you're
being
the expression. The expression of consciousness in contact is now.
Yeah.
Hearing, feeling, say. I would say we're more of that than thinking about what we are, or thinking about what we were, or thinking about what we're going to be. All basically rooted in identifying as a body. A body is sort of an object that allows life to be expressed here, but it's not what's expressing life. You can have a dead body and every part of it works, and yet it's not working. What happened? The animating principle is left. That's what enlivens a life. That's what turns the whole production on, like this stage, is the light of consciousness. How can you believe you are something other than that when it's the mother and father of everything that you call your life? You wouldn't have any thoughts. You wouldn't be able to see any thoughts. You wouldn't be able to have any feelings without consciousness, without the awareness of contact. So the conscious contact to me is the true birth of me every moment. And that has been sort of hijacked, and a changeling has been put in its place called Paul, this just huge catacomb of ideas and thoughts and old conditioning represented as a body.
And all the time is given to that. The attention is thrown on that.
Of course, because you think it's you.
And no attention is that
Because it's not you.
What's real is starved.
Well, it can't be starved. It doesn't need any food.
It doesn't need any food.
You sure need your attention to be on it. It would be very helpful to you here to be attending or be conscious of consciousness. It would have a great dramatic effect on how you travel here. But you have no effect on it whatsoever. You can huff and puff. You're never going to blow that conscious house down. It's impossible. You don't leave any effect on consciousness. It's not a thing. It doesn't have a surface to scar. It doesn't take any impressions. It's not like a negative. It's nothing, no thing. It's consciousness. It's illumination. It's light. You are that light that's allowing you to think you're not.
What a gift.
Yeah. I would just, for me, it's really practical. It's like if you're traveling heavy and it's not really working, blaming everyone else for it. Because the people you're thinking so badly of, they're probably not thinking about you at all today. You're having absolutely no effect on them whatsoever. They're just jollying, running around. I mean, to take stock of what's going on. And if it seems to be everything's going on to you, maybe you're not that you it's going on to. And maybe that would change how you interpret what's going on. Maybe you could see life in a different way if you didn't think it was happening to you so much. Yeah, who knows? For me, it works. That's why I'm in Chicago at 10:30 in the morning. No idea what I'm doing here.
Right. Well, I've noticed that too. I've just noticed that you don't even have to take a position about it. You could just see that it's getting looser, and really the identification is getting looser, and it really doesn't matter that much whether my ideas are proved right or whether they're wrong or whether they improve or whether they actually are dead failures. It just seems like life is easier to live, and more opportunities come. And actually, I don't even think the opportunities come. I think the opportunities are all here. And it's just my blinders. When they get off just a little bit, I could say, oh, there's one, I'll grab it. Yes, I'll go there. I could do that. I could do this TV show today. Hey, I could invite Paul to come to Chicago. There's so many things I
You should
can
forget
do.
that idea.
Forget that one, Stay in bed, right? 10:30.
When that comes up again, say no to that idea. It's just about traveling lighter, If you want to be right about traveling heavy, go ahead. I'd rather just travel light. If I'm dying of thirst, I don't care if the guy's bringing it with a green shirt or a red shirt. I'm going to grab the water and drink it. I don't want to be right. That's what happens. See, if you have an idea about life, and you're going to, from self-centeredness, you're going to have preconceived ideas of how things are going to look. And so maybe you have a desire to be loved or to get acknowledged or just to feel like a sense of belonging. But that's not enough for self-centeredness, that urge or that desire. It has an idea of how it has to look. And so when that package comes and it doesn't look like it's in the package you thought, you will probably say no to that delivery.
Yeah,
because life is giving you everything.
Maybe
There's an
ignore it,
invitation.
or maybe you won't even see it.
Of course you won't, because you have a preconceived idea. That's exactly the dilemma here. Life is bringing a lot of things at all times in all directions, but you have an idea of how it's supposed to look like, where it's supposed to come, when it's supposed to come, and you miss the deliveries all day. And then you have a story about how I've never gotten anything, I've never been loved and everything like that. Love's been all around you probably. You just haven't seen it because you're blind, because you're stuck with a way of looking called self-centeredness. It wants to be right. It's very important for self-centeredness to be right. If it has a belief that you suck or you're a loser, it has an incredible drive to make sure that it's right about
you're a
that.
loser.
Yes. It's just using you and me for transportation, seriously.
It wants to be right. That's something to look at. I mean, what's the point of that?
I have no idea. I think it's to get some relevance, because it's irrelevant. For me, this mental system, I believe, is almost like a parasite. It's like a foreign installment. Yeah? The host has forgotten it's the host, and that reminder of the quality of being the host is conscious contact. So we're out to lunch. The self-centeredness replaces the conscious contact with an interpretation of the conscious contact. So what we call life, or my life, is an interpretation of life. Yeah? That foreign installment, that parasite, doesn't have a life. So it gets the sense of a life by having yours. Yeah? And it's a very hostile takeover. You tell me how many people are happy, joyous, and free walking around Chicago today. Or many of them are probably hoping that maybe someday, or maybe later tonight, they may have some happiness, joyous, and freedom. But if they stop right now at every street corner and just was stopped in that pause, their mind reaction to that pause would be dissatisfaction. they're moving and driving and shopping and doing this. They get time to try to find something to satisfy that deep sense of dissatisfaction that we're traveling as each moment. And that is while it's feeding on us. This parasite feeds on the host, yeah? And it takes the host's life and it uses it to express itself through. And one of its forms of expressing is to be right about its ideas, because its ideas are like its flesh and blood. It wants to be right about how it views people.
It doesn't have any flesh and blood, and it's just got ideas.
It builds a sense of flesh and blood by you believing it's you. You lend it its credibility.
I love what you said, stop on every street corner, and where's your satisfaction? What'll come in your mind is, I got to get these things done. And I've got to get 2 more done, and I don't have time, and there's traffic out there, and you won't even be stopping. There's no way to stop on the street corner.
Exactly.
You don't stop.
Because you're in seeking constantly. Seeking. Why haven't you found yet? If what you were seeking had the true authenticity to radically shift you, then why are you still seeking? Don't you have the ability to respond to satisfaction? Or is it always overridden for the search, for the seeking? This thing is ravenous. It thrives in the sense of seeking. It doesn't thrive in peace and resting and relaxation. It loves excitement it likes the boredom that looks exciting. It's the same old, but it gets excited about it.
In a way, this is an invitation. So in a way, everyone tells us to keep going, and go get those things.
Who's everybody?
I don't know. School's okay. Go to school. I mean, what are they teaching you? They're teaching you how to get a job and how to make goals and how to reach them, and that no matter what, you can apply yourself. And
it's like that inherent fear of that you won't have a job and you won't get this. Everything is underlined by fear. Fear of what you're going to lose or what you have, and then you're not going to be able to keep. It's always based on fear. All seeking is motivated through fear, in a sense. When's enough is enough? School's fine. All this stuff is fine, but isn't there a way that you could travel through all of these things a little lighter? I mean, for me, the pursuit of happiness is really exhausting. Yeah? I would much rather just realize I am the source of happiness than I can sort of leisurely walk on the pursuit.
Or do anything you want. You can run or walk or sit down.
That's right. Or maybe just contribute to others. Who knows? See, in this reality, to me, this spiritual dimension, if you want to call it, you have things by giving it away. Yeah? You have it by giving it away. It's so much of you, there's no need to privatize it. Yeah? It's so much of you, there's no need to sort of like partition it out and give portions out. You can be all of you at each moment because there's a lot of you. The other, self-centeredness, is a scavenger. It's seeking. It's looking for things. It's looking for shiny objects. It's looking for this. It's looking for mementos. It's looking for scalps. It's looking for that to create a sense of having a life because it doesn't feel like it has a life.
It's also very limited, so you dole it out very...
Of course, because you're afraid if I give something away, I won't have enough. So I can't give away my time, I can't give my attention, I can't give this. I got to be very, very organized. Who am I going to give attention to? You ever go to a doctor in a clinic in a city? I have. And it's not them. The system is they walk in. When they walk in the room to see you, they've actually already walked out. You have to drag their attention to be present to sort of address your situation, because the system is not about addressing your situation. It's about addressing situations. And it's like a conveyor belt. It's very difficult to get their attention. Hey, I'm a human being who has a bad leg right now, and it's affecting my whole day of traveling. Will you give me the 15 minutes while you're supposed to be in this room instead of checking off, I've seen this, then going to the next appointment? This is what life is like here. It's a constant movement, searching for freaking what?
So it's
if
not
it was
the
here,
doctor,
you would have
it's just
found.
our minds.
It's the system.
It's a system of identification, a system of mental apparatus.
Check it out. Tell me. Do you have? Sometimes the greatest moments of intimacy I have is when I go through a toll booth for that 30 seconds of looking at that person. I have more intimacy for them because there's a safety. I won't be there in a minute, and they won't be there in a minute. Someone who I'm living with, I have more intimacy with that toll booth operator. of times. This is a disease. It's a dis-ease. And just because everyone has it and we're used to it, and there's all these pseudo placebo, solutions that keep us living in a hope that someday I'm going to arrive and everything I've done is going to really translate into me feeling happy, joyous, and free for a long period of time. Has it worked? Every time have you arrived, have you actually been able to stop and lay down and relax in that arrival, or is it like, oh, time to get up to look for the next arrival? There's a modality of mind I'd like to express from self-centeredness, and this is called the here-there modality for me. The here modality is this: I'm in my little one-bedroom apartment, and everything's fine. I'm feeling pretty good. I took the shower. Everything's good. And there's a magazine there, and I open up the magazine. I'm reading it, and there's a big full-page layout for an advertisement for a couch. Yeah. So my mind sees the couch, and then it looks around the room and realizes it's couchless. There's no couch in this one-bedroom apartment. And then suddenly, my head gets very dissatisfied, which when I was just totally at peace about a minute ago. But now that it noticed, hey, I could have a couch, and I don't have a couch, it starts feeling irritable, restless, and discontent. And so it starts saying, all those people I know who have couches, they've never told me how important it is to have a couch. And you start resenting those people for not informing you, and then you start thinking, if I had a couch, I may conceive my first child on that couch with my girlfriend. You don't even have a girlfriend yet, but you're already assuming. So the mind starts really pumping up a huge meaning in having a couch in a way of invalidating the couchless state. So where you find yourself isn't good enough, so you start seeking. And every moment in self-centeredness where you find yourself will never be truly good enough. It may be good enough for half a second, but it won't be good sooner or later. Usually sooner. So there it goes. So now I make the couch there, and I go, if I get a couch, all these wonderful things are going to happen in my life. My life is going to be so fulfilling with that couch. And conversely, because I don't have a couch, my life is unfulfilling. This is the interpretation of the head. You're totally neutral. It could be great that day. But now, nope. Until I get that couch, every day is just waiting for that freaking couch. Yeah. So now I start working and I save my money and I'm looking at other couches and colors and swatches and stuff. And then the day arrives. I'm telling all my friends, and they're not seemingly as excited as me about the couch, because probably they've gone through the same dilemma. But I'm uniquely seeing myself as special. Now this couch is going to put me over the top. It may not have put them over the top, but me it is. So the day comes, they bring the couch over here. As soon as I get on the couch, I have this great rush. Oh, man, I'm on the couch. And then about 4 minutes later, I realize I got to get a rug to match the couch. So that mythical there that was going to be the solution to all these unimportant heres now becomes a here. The couch state is now a here. And now it's the rugless state. Yeah? On and on and on and on and on and on and on. You think you're going to arrive and be at peace, have you? If it hasn't happened now, I wouldn't expect it to happen later. This is just an invitation. Maybe you want to look at what's running your life. If you're happy with its results, then keep the managerial team in place. If you're not, there's a way out, realizing you're not that.
We're actually doing some meetings this weekend, and we've got a little in my place in Forest Park, actually, and we're going to do a meeting from 4 to 6 today, and then tomorrow on Sunday we're going to have noon to 2, and then another 4 to 6, and you can just come and check it out.
Zen Bitch Slap.
My number's probably up on the. I think my cell phone's up on the right. It's and you can give me a call and get directions. And also nevernothere.com. If you go to nevernothere.com, you can. The second to last tab is called Schedules. If you can get on a computer, and Schedules events will give the address. But it's close to Harlem and Roosevelt, so Harlem is like the Blue Line stop, Harlem. And Paul's also got a website that he asked me to tell you what it is. It's called the Zen Bitch Slap. So .com. So Zen Bitch Slap. That Buddhism sometimes has koans, and one koan is.
They'll just leave it at that.
Yeah.
That's good.
Right. Okay. That's. one way to get a hold of Paul. But if you go to nevernothere.com, there's links to Paul's website, so if you don't remember that. And so we've had a good time talking in the past, and I'm sure tomorrow and this afternoon will be great too. People can ask questions. I think we have time for another phone call if someone wants to call in. We might have about 8 minutes or something like that, or 6 minutes. And so interpretation in a way is kind of like it's a little tricky if we totally rely only on interpretation, and interpretation again is what we call what's not happening or what's not here. It's just a story about what we think is here.
Yeah, if you're happy with it, live in the story.
We tell the story over and over. It has a certain repetition to it because it's our story, and we keep bringing up the same things. Somehow they're not finished. They're not. They're still important to us, and so then they repeat. And it could be just thoughts about how our life is running. It could be our relationships seem to repeat. Somehow people that get divorced tend to get divorced several times.
Can I add something? I wanted to say something. This is a simple way to experience. Obsessing with what you're not is your interest and your attention is drawn into thoughts about you. Let's say there's a woman in the other room that I'm interested in, and I'd like to hear what she thinks about me. So if I can, because I definitely don't want to get rejected. So I want to see if she's. I'd like to go out with Paul, so then I can go. Okay, I'll go ask her. So here I am at this talk or whatever. This is what's happening, but my mind, my attention is interested in what she's saying about me. I'm hoping she's talking about me in this other room. So I'm straining to hear through the walls to hear what this lady's saying about me. Yeah. Now, someone says, Paul, you're here, like we did today. They give you the information. You're here and now, this and that, but it doesn't really matter to me because my interest and attention is wanting to hear about that babe. Yeah. It's very difficult to break. But as soon as I hear her say, oh, I really like that guy Matt, and my name is Paul, by the way, I lose interest in it immediately. I do not have to take a workshop to lose interest in it. I don't have to read a book to lose interest in it. It's just, as soon as I recognize it's not about me, I lose interest in it. If you can entertain the thoughts that are running through your head all day, they may not be about you, they may not be, may not been the thinker of them, you will lose interest in them. And you cannot lose interest or attention. You just lose you lose attention, or the attention gets removed from that object. You have an infinite amount of attention, and you have a lot of interest. There's a huge amount. So it's not, you don't lose any, you just lose it from that object.
You detach it, you gain it in a way.
Exactly. It gets freed up, and you can live it instead of having it constantly just being absorbed in thoughts about what's not happening. Yeah. And then you'll feel like you're alive, and I'll tell you, that's a big antidote to a lot of your problems. If you actually felt you were alive, the way you would see problems would be quite different. It's very difficult to see a dead problem when you're dead. It has a lot of meaning. But when you're actually alive, what you didn't think you could dance with before, you may be able to dance quite well with.
So the second question we were talking about, well, how do you hold a problem? Well, then that problem and the whole group of problems in my life are kind of like those women in the other room where our attention is straining to solve those problems. And so in that way, we've kind of like cut ourselves off from the life force, or in a way, that's a deadness.
Well, the thing is, for me, while you're dealing with all those problems, you're not dealing with the original problem, which is a misidentification. So that misidentification is going to continually beget problems. So you'll have a lot of problems in your life, and no matter if you solve them or not, there'll still be more coming. But because I would say the original problem is like a row of knots. So let's say I don't have much money and my girlfriend left and this and that. So the row of knots of my life are all these topics: security, ambitions, plans, relationships. And so sometimes I concentrate on one of the knots. I'll try to work on that, and maybe I get a little bit of release. And so I tell everyone about that workshop or that book. And then a month later it tightens up again. I say, oh, that book sucked, and don't go to that workshop, But I found, in my experience, that these things keep unknotting and knotting. But there is the first knot, and to me the first knot is misidentification. I believe I'm something that I'm not, and that causes me to be at the effect of the system of mind called self-centeredness. When I told the truth that I wasn't this thing called self, that knot has a thread that goes through all the knots of my life. And like Jesus Christ, I think he supposedly said, I don't know what he said, you'll know the tree by its fruits. So by looking at my life in the last 15 years, the fruits that have occurred point out to a damn very good tree. And so you'll know the tree by the fruits.
And another way to say it is like maybe the original knot is kind of wants and to be anonymous. And so it keeps throwing these other knots and say, hey, work with this first, and don't look at me.
Of course it does.
Don't look at me.
No, it doesn't want to be anonymous. It wants to be you.
Yeah.
It would be great if it was anonymous. It's constantly proclaiming it's you every freaking day.
Oh, gosh. Wow, now it really flew by. I don't know if this me really has a good feeling for you, or if this is something. Again, I invite you to call our number and come out to Forest Park and talk directly to Paul and me. And we've got a lot of things happening with the Never Not Here website, and we do webcasts and so on. But I just can't get enough of this invitation, and I can't really seem to give it out enough. You know, I just have an enormous urge to talk about this and just talk about traveling lighter and talk to people like Paul and so I hope you relate to it. But so anyhow, I really thank you for your time and for taking me up on this invitation to come out to Chicago and talk to who's here. I think that this is a great opportunity. I love the CAN TV and Channel 19. Just really pleased to be here.
Thank you for having us.
Your beloved called you here today.
That was fun.
Asking for this dance, what will you say? Are you gonna throw the chance away?
You have to see the hilarity of this place. You have to see the hilarity of it.